Hey, welcome back everyone. So it's part two, and this is where we're going to look a little bit more around how to find those opportunities and forge out some kind of game-changing scenarios that you can pursue as part of your sort of job quest, really. Because sometimes when you've just qualified or you're looking for that kind of dream role or you've seen other people get into it, where do you actually start to go and dive into that market? Because sometimes if this was me sort of after my graduation, I think you're filled with a lot of different emotions, aren't you? So you have that sort of excitement, that sort of pride that you've kind of got through the whole course. You've driven through loads of assignments and placements and kind of done everything that you need to. But then when you then step into the market, then what's next, really? And that's sometimes the next question that you need to do while you're managing all this sort of feeling of, oh, do I know enough? Will I have enough supervision? Have I got kind of this imposter syndrome that a lot of us have, that whether we're going to be good enough when we get in there? And I think it's totally normal because we have gaps in our knowledge. And actually, it's unsurprising that happens. So employers will appreciate that. They'll recognise that. And they'll often look for that potential, that desire, that sort of professionalism and willingness to fit in and learn more than potentially looking for the total package. So sometimes it's a little bit of a case of looking at what other people have done in that space to get to where you want to go. So it's that kind of emulation of those different behaviors. And I think sometimes what we need to do is just acknowledge that we have to persevere. Things aren't going to drop into our lap. We are going to have to go and pursue them. Not just once, not just twice, but be consistent, almost that persistence beats resistance mentality of going, you know what, if this is where I want to go, what do I need to get there? Can I look at someone who's a real inspiration? For me, in the physio world, that was this guy on the right-hand side, Derek Wright, coming from a kind of a working class background. He'd sort of worked his way up through the ranks of Newcastle, a million miles away from the glamorous world of money that we have in football at the moment, and just worked his way through that system. And he got to a place where he was then treating arguably the best footballers in the world, like Mr. Shearer on the right-hand side. So what do you need to do? And what have other people done who've stepped into that space? And can you mimic some of those behaviours along the way? So this short sort of section really around this is going to look at where we look for those specific roles and what those opportunities are. Are there any particular gaps in the market that you could pursue? Recognize your own talents. So what are you really good at? What did you enjoy a lot during your sort of time at university or in your current roles? And can you do more of that? Similarly, what did you not like might give you some clues as well. Then what we're going to do is look at the sort of job spec. So we've got some specific examples of jobs that are available in that sports space and musculoskeletal space. And we'll just break it down in terms of what experiences are needed, the pay and the hours that you might consider. Is there training? Is there a networking opportunity? Does it just give you kudos in that space to kind of kick on to the next level? And the other things that are worth considering is it a part-time role or a full-time role? And what does that look like? Because obviously you can separate your hours according to what fits with your own schedule a little bit better. You might cram it all into 4 days, those full-time hours. So therefore you've got 3 days extra. Might be that you just want a part-time role and then do another role in the rest of the time. Or if you're in that lucky position, maybe that's enough. It might be look for permanent roles, so that's job security that you sometimes have versus maybe doing something as a contractor or as a locum. Neither's right, neither's wrong. I've had plenty of friends who kind of worked in that kind of locum role and done that for a long time. And actually that security was there, the pay was better. So there are also opportunities that you can go with. And the last thing is just to acknowledge that, again, lots of people did what I did, where you worked a full-time role within maybe like an NHS or private practice space, but that didn't give you the support that you needed. So you might have a little side hustle. Grow Physio came from a real passion project as a bit of a side hustle as well. So it just encompassed all the things that I'm really passionate about education and helping others and that sort of professional sporting space. But it's tough, isn't it? So this is what the current perception of the UK job market is. We have the NHS, which is a really well-renowned healthcare provider, really rare in terms of the fact that it's all free. And actually, most people go to that direction when they qualify for physio, but we need to think a little bit more outside the box because there aren't many jobs in that specific space, and there's potentially a lot of candidates. There's sometimes up to about 200 people in that space applying for a particular role at the moment, so it's incredibly competitive. So you do need to think outside the box and think about what's going to give you a bit of a competitive edge that helps you stand out from the crowd. So think about yourself, have a bit of introspection, what skills set you aside potentially from the rest. Think about personal life, job roles, experiences on placements, etc. And then focus in on what you have. It's really common to look at all the things that you lack or what other people have an advantage over you with when you look at jobs. But what do you specifically bring, and try and focus on those and get them across in your interview. And don't forget, it's your own unique journey. So no one else has walked the walk that you have and learn the things that hopefully you've learned. And all you need to do really is demonstrate how that can benefit the employer that you're applying for. So I think as I went through in the sort of first part, really, what do you want? What are you looking for is the first step, really, isn't it? And your long-term vision or ambition might be this kind of dream role that you have. But the question you've got to ask is this attainable at your current stage? And if it's not, then what do you need to do in order to put you into a position that if that job comes available, you have the credentials that you require to step into that space. So mapping out that plan of what you're going to do on a sort of a baby step sort of way is really, really important. And actually, what's achievable or manageable right now? You might be working full time, you might have kids, you might have the opposite where you've got lots of freedom to move and potentially kind of relocate and things like that. So again, your own unique situation, think about what you can have in the capacity that you have and where you can, how quickly you can move with that. Again, go back to those kind of behaviors and actions. If you're not sure what you need to do, just look at someone who's in that role. What have they done to get there? And I would just look at these three things, really. So what characteristics have they possessed, and what sort of personality traits and things have they had in order to step into that world? What experiences did they kind of forge out or manufacture? And what qualifications do you need? Because experiences and qualifications are a real mixture, really, isn't it? Which one's more important? Well, I think to get the opportunity and even give you a chance or a shot at it, sometimes you've just got to tick off some of that key essential criteria, which we'll go through in a little bit. But also the experiences are really important, and what you learned on that journey, and actually your mentality and drive and ambition. And basically showing that willing that you've been proactive, you've actively opted in, and what have you potentially enjoyed more of along that journey, and then try and match that into the roles that you have. Yes, we have to be consistent. Yes, we have to be persistent with it. Sometimes there's things that we don't necessarily want to do, but how can we kind of make that as good as possible? And it's interesting, isn't it, when there's surveys that have been done actually with employers, they actually value that practical experience more than some of those qualifications. So it might be that you've got this amazing resume, but you can't apply it, or you haven't stepped into that world. So you're theoretically very, very strong, but practically really struggling to apply it. Now, in terms of kind of where to go and look for these jobs, this is important, isn't it? Because where you start on that journey is really important in terms of kind of finding the opportunities, because there's 1,000,001 jobs that are out there, but which ones are going to serve you the best at the moment? So I'm just going to go through where some of those places are. So depending on where you are in the world or in the country, you're going to have some of these sort of major recruiting organizations. So Indeed are someone who I go to and have a little look at. They often list physiotherapy related roles within certain areas. You can narrow it down, the focus. NHS Jobs is obviously one which a lot of you will be familiar with. And what you can do with these kind of larger recruiters is set up these alerts on their apps and things, so you can get those that criteria that you specifically want, and then set an alert when they become available, so you can then therefore be a bit of ahead of the game with that. There's also locum agencies as well. So signing up for locum agencies isn't a bad little one if you're potentially in between work or wanting to do a little bit of something else, or have that flexibility. It's a mishmash of short and longer term roles, usually higher pay, usually less benefits in terms of kind of you don't get holidays, you don't get pension contributions and things like that, but actually you get ultimate flexibility, you get more money. So as long as you're sort of savvy with that, you can potentially do that, and that's also not limited to the UK. So if you're based here in the UK, they will also advertise some roles abroad. So it might be a really exciting sort of stopgap if you're struggling here, that you consider looking even further afield than just relocating within the UK. Nothing's necessarily forever. It might just be that you set yourself 6 months or a year or a couple of years that you're out there, and you'll build some amazing experiences looking back. The other things to look at are multi-sport sort of advertising roles. So certain organisations are in charge of many different types of sports. So if we take Olympic and Paralympic sports, they often sit under this UK Sports Institute umbrella. So go to their website, have a little look on there. UK Sport will advertise roles that are within sport, but they also actually have expanded recently into other roles that include event cover. It might be sort of part-time roles within different contexts, and also sort of private clinics. If you wanted to look at a more sports-specific area, again, someone like the Training Ground Guru is quite good. They just specialise in football, but as a result, it's a really common site that people will advertise jobs in there. If there's a specific sport that you're interested in, or you're particularly interested in a certain type of injury that occurs within a sport, then go to them directly. So individual sports will often have their own budgets. They're often lottery or kind of UK sport funded, as well as kind of grants and things that become available. And they may well just recruit internally. So when I worked for the UK Sports Institute, the other physiotherapists, the other sports strength and conditioning staff, they were actually employed by British Judo. So although we worked together, they both had different benefits. These are also worth just pursuing and exploring on their own websites. So search for individual sports, search in job opportunities, and sometimes they'll crop up. This also applies for different football teams that you can sort of see there, rugby clubs, and typically it's a case of going to them specifically. One other thing that's really nice, just again as a way to scratch that itch, if you don't have a role within sport but you want to dip your toe in, there's lots of organisations that do event cover. So you can tap in and tap out on weekends or take a week off work, for example. The Sports Medics one is brilliant. They'll cover big major events, things like marathons, triathlons, maybe sort of things like your high rocks competitions, things like that. So they'll recruit and then basically they'll allocate you to certain roles. So again, you can put your availability down, and that's the same with a lot of these kind of national governing bodies as well. So I do that with the LTA in tennis, I do it with British Gymnastics, because there's always events that are going on throughout the country, and where I am based at the moment in Birmingham, there's lots of events going on quite locally. They'll often go through moulage training, networking opportunities, so you might kind of be sitting on the sideline with someone, maybe not doing a great deal for a lot of it and just chatting, but actually some of those connections can lead to greater opportunities in the future. Obviously, if you are qualified with a particular profession, you can join their governing body. They'll often also have newsletters and job opportunities that they share as well. So these websites or Facebook groups or whatever it is that you're kind of connected to on social medias or otherwise, they may well also offer you opportunities with support for interview preps and things like that as well. So that can be a great little avenue to go into. The CSP, who we use, they have a specific careers section. So again, that's worth having a little dive into. I think this is probably the most under-tapped area. So if you commit into working on some of these more professional sites like LinkedIn, this is an amazing way. I'm constantly getting bombarded by job opportunities that sit within my realm. So the algorithms that kick in behind the scenes and look at what roles you do does require you to set up your profile and keep a little bit more active, but they will almost fire jobs at you on a regular basis. And there's also pages that you can have a little look at. So there's specific groups that are created which will demonstrate different jobs that are available. So it's really worth having a little look for them. Sign up for the jobs section. And also what I do is sort of post and repost things and comment on some of these opportunities, because any ways that you can get into or infiltrate and chat to anyone who's involved with the recruitment process has to be a really good thing. The other things that are sort of worth just having a little think about is, are you near any specific private or boarding schools or universities that are local? So we've got the big hitters, haven't we? We've got the big kind of boarding schools which have a whole host of students who will be playing sport on a regular basis, usually Wednesdays, Saturdays, potentially Sundays. Same with universities as well. So again, it's worth thinking, what are the key unis in my area? What sports do they do? And reach out and just say, do you want someone who could come and travel with you, come and strap? It might be that the students potentially dip in their pocket and pay a little bit of money each and share the cost for your hourly rate. It might be that the schools actually have a professional kind of recruitment program. So these are really useful. Got some good friends who sort of work within sort of boarding schools at the moment and absolutely love it. They travel often for a term with a specific sport. So friends who work in and around rugby will do the first term, and then actually they may not be as involved in some of the other sports later on. So they share that responsibility quite nicely. And this is something that happens sort of organically, really, a little bit, but you can certainly manufacture this a little bit more. So obviously word of mouth is really, really important. So any recommendations that you get from colleagues, patients, wider contacts, etc., who know you, recommend you for a role, can speak volumes, can't it? So when you're on placements, it's sometimes deemed a little bit of a trial period. It's a chance for the employers to almost try before they buy. So if there's a job opportunity that comes up in that trust, for example, or in that role, and you apply for it and you've already applied yourself really well and showed willingness and kind of managed patient loads really well, asked questions, been proactive, these are all amazing ways that you'll have a bit of a step ahead from some of the other people. It's more of a gamble to go for someone who they don't know than it is for someone who they kind of know and trust. So again, that's sort of the contacts beforehand, but also if you've had a chance to step into that space beforehand is really, really useful. Just that kind of calmness that you'll feel when you go into your interview, really, really important as well. So you can get that organically, but don't forget you can also kind of incentivize and encourage people to share that. So if you are working currently in private practice, please just ask people to sort of share reviews. I've not done that enough with Grow Physio, but you can see once you get kind of high ratings and type that into a search engine, then it speaks volumes, doesn't it? Now, the next thing really is, once you've kind of found the role, is what does that role entail? So you're going to have something called the job spec that kind of outlines exactly what you require in terms of your experiences and qualifications. You'll have your job description that will kind of very briefly go through kind of what your days and hours are, whether you needed to cover training, cover matches, cover evenings, weekends. Is that what you want? Because if not, maybe this isn't currently the role for you. It might be that you have to suck it up and it might not be forever. But again, if you give up time for a little bit, you might put a bit of a deadline on when you want to step in and out of that responsibility. Who do you report to? What's the kind of CPD budgets and things that are available are also really useful. Then you're going to have your person spec as well. So they're the kind of characteristics. So what are the kind of desirable and essential traits and expectations? Would you fit in? And then I always find this. So one of the wisest things that my old manager told me was that actually you can train new skills, but you can't train a new personality. So again, if you're not yet at the level necessarily, or someone slightly better in their skill sets, that's just the way things are. What can you do to fill the gap? But also, if you're showing proactiveness and willingness, that's going to be really, really important. So that personality bit comes through. And this is why, isn't it, really? So if I was going to employ you for a role within a sports team, I've got to work with you on a regular basis, but I've got to know that you've got us and we've got you as well. So again, it's that whole kind of process of, when you step in, I'm willing to invest my time in you, but actually I need to know that you're going to give back at the same sort of time. So this is just sort of an example of two different roles that are currently advertised. We've got a lead physio role within British Triathlon and Para Triathlon in the UK Sports Institute. And then we've got a role as a women's team physio at Huddersfield Town Football Club. So you can see, just to break it down, it'll sometimes... In the UK SI, it's much better because they actually give you a salary. It'll tell you the location, what kind of contract it is it permanent, part-time, full-time, etc., what the closing date is, and just make sure that you're available for that interview date as well. On the flip side to that, on the right-hand side, you can see Huddersfield Town advertising a role with the women, and it's paid hourly. Although it's permanent, it's part-time, and again, it'll give you a little bit of information about it. The key things that you have to look at really is this essential criteria. So I'll often break down into 3 seconds: essential, desirable, and then some other areas as well, which we'll go through to little bonuses. But this is usually the absolute must. So if you're not hitting the essential criteria, it's a bit of a waste of time going through this process and applying, because all that's going to happen is they're going to tick this off on an algorithm basis and just reject it. However, if you're sort of really close to this and you're not quite sure whether you fulfill it or not, and it's not stonewall like a degree level of 2-1, for example, or above, then reach out to them, ask that question. It shows proactiveness, it shows willingness to try and find out whether you are available. The desirable criteria, this is kind of the stuff that they're hoping for. So the experiences of kind of ideally lots of experience within the role in a similar sport, different responsibilities that can be transferable, real quick transition into this world. And that might be that you've kind of proven that you've got some of these qualifications that don't require them to then invest out of their own budget to bring you up to speed. Because all of the time and all of the money that they invest in you, they want to try and make sure that that's optimal as much as they can. And then the bonus bits, really. So this is the unique stuff about you. So have you been proactive and acquired those extra experiences and qualifications? Things that are small but merely make a big difference are things often with kudos or volunteering for things, giving up time, shadowing, dipping in your own pocket and getting an extra qualification, for example, running through things online to make yourself better. And basically, again, all that sort of stuff is they can ideally pass on the responsibility, so it takes workload off them. So the more things you can bring, the more enthusiasm that you have, the more you feel like you can demonstrate that you'll fit in, the better. So this is just another job that we'll go through that kind of outlines this. So you can sort of see the men's team physio role with the FA at based up at St George's Park, which is where their sort of national training centre is, really. So it ideally will outline those primary responsibilities. So as you read these, it's worth just breaking down, does this sound like it's something for me? Can I do 80 to 100 days on camps abroad or kind of away in that time? What are you required to do during that? And then you're basically getting a bit of a flavour of, is this for me? Is it not for me? And then obviously kind of you have your essential criteria that we mentioned before. So again, degrees in physios, you have to be members of the CSP, members of the HCPC, and then obviously kind of extensive experience as a physio. This is a pretty high level role, isn't it? So some of these roles might be out of your kind of reach at the moment, but what could you do in the interim? We may well be applying for other roles that are kind of more manageable at this time. Other things that we kind of mentioned, so this is the desirable stuff, so that beneficial to have bits that sort of sit within there, so experience within an international or professional football club. Again, it's not essential, but it's desirable because it's going to make you hopefully understand the environment, have an easier transition into that role. And then the other bits that are nice that are put in is kind of what's in it for you. So again, this has to work for both parties. So I think the temptation is you just go, I'm just so happy that somebody wants me, but actually it also has to hit a lot of the key boxes for you. So what are you getting out of this role as well? And I think just to wrap things up, really, you have to just be in it to win it, wouldn't you? So if you put your name in the hat, then actually it's really important that you actually would accept that role, because otherwise you're kind of wasting your own time, wasting someone else's time. Because if you go through the whole process, they offer you the role and you go, oh, I don't want it, it leaves a little bit of a bad taste in the mouth. However, it might be that you've got multiple applications going on at the same time and you pick the one that is the best fit for you at that particular moment, which is obviously absolutely fine. You can always negotiate things. So if you do get offered that role, then there may be a little bit of flex to explore some slight little variations in what's happening. And yeah, the other things are, I think the classic thing is that there's no way that I'll get this. So there's bound to be more people who are more qualified. There's bound to be more people with more experiences than I have. What chance have I got? Well, you can't control those things. So all you can do is control the controllables and do the best that you possibly can. Big yourself up and go from there. So that's this section wrapped up. again, really big fan of kind of getting your insights as well. Reach out if you've got any questions. And in the next section, we'll kick on to the next phase. So hopefully, guys, we'll see you then.